Before the hum of the casino became the soundtrack to my life, there was the quiet rhythm of a world I had built with my own two hands. My life was a well-executed business plan. I was a partner in a boutique consulting firm I had co-founded, a startup that had weathered the early storms and was now sailing on smooth, profitable waters. We were the guys who came in and fixed broken companies, masters of strategy and risk management. I lived and breathed this ethos. My personal finances were a fortress, a diversified portfolio of shares, a healthy stake in a few promising tech ventures, and even a speculative but significant holding of Bitcoin, bought back when it was just a whisper on the internet. We had the perfect house in the perfect suburb, a wife I adored, and two children who were the axis my world spun on. My love for them was the only investment I considered truly risk-free, the one with guaranteed infinite returns. The casino at first wasn't a vice, it was a perk. It was the glittering reward at the end of a successful deal, a weekend in Vegas or Atlantic City with clients celebrating a closed contract. It was a world of complimentary sweets, expensive scotch, and the satisfying clatter of chips in your hand. I wasn't a gambler, I was a player. I saw the poker table not as a game of chance, but as a boardroom with cards. It was about reading people, managing assets, and knowing when to apply pressure. And I was good at it, very good. I would come home from these trips with a few $1,000s in my pocket, cash I'd call my fun money. I'd use it to buy my wife a piece of jewelry she'd been admiring or a new top-of-the-line gadget for the house. It felt like free money, a bonus income stream generated by my own cleverness. She never questioned it, she just saw the gifts, the happy, relaxed version of me that came home from those trips. She saw it as a harmless way for me to unwind from a high-pressure job. The first time it shifted from a perk to a problem was a quiet Tuesday night. A deal had fallen through at the last minute. It wasn't catastrophic for the firm, but it was a blow to my ego. I felt restless, angry, powerless. I didn't want to talk about it with my wife. I didn't want to bring that failure into our home, so I opened my laptop. I found a high-stakes online poker room, the kind that mimicked the glamour of the real thing. I deposited $1,000. My plan was just to play for an hour to feel that sense of control I had lost earlier in the day. 3 hours later, I was up by $10,000. The feeling was electric, a jolt of pure power that dwarfed anything I felt in the boardroom. The failed deal was forgotten. This felt more real, more potent. I hadn't just earned money, I had conquered chaos. I had imposed my will on the randomness of the universe and won. That night, I created a separate bank account. I told myself it was for organization, to keep my winnings separate from our family's budget. In reality, it was the first brick in a wall I was building between my two lives. The online casino became my secret sanctuary. After the kids were asleep and my wife was reading in bed, I would retreat to my office, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. It was my second job, my side hustle. I started applying my professional skills to it, creating spreadsheets, tracking my wins and losses, developing what I believed was a foolproof system. For a while, it worked. The secret account grew. It felt like I had discovered a cheat code for life, a source of passive income that no one else was smart enough to figure out. I started to feel a quiet contempt for the slow, grinding work of the stock market, the patient accumulation of wealth. This was faster, better, more thrilling. But the casino is a patient predator. It lets you win, it feeds your ego, it makes you feel like a king. But the house always has the edge, and its greatest advantage is human psychology. My first major loss was a gut punch, a $30,000 downswing over a single weekend. It was more than a loss of money. It was a crack in my system, a dent in my armor of invincibility. The logical part of my brain, the risk manager, told me to walk away, to cut my losses and accept the hit. But another voice, the voice of the player, the voice of my ego, told me this was just a market fluctuation, a temporary dip that I could trade my way out of. I needed to recoup the loss before my wife could see the quarterly statement from our investment account, from which I had borrowed the initial stake. This was the moment the fun stopped. It was no longer about the thrill of winning. It was about the desperate, gnawing fear of being found out. I started making bigger, more reckless bets, not to get ahead, but to get even. I was no longer a player in control. I was a man in a hole, frantically digging, trying to shovel my way back to the surface. And the hole just kept getting deeper. I would sit at the dinner table, smiling and nodding as my wife talked about our daughter's school play or our son's first t-ball game. But my mind was a million miles away, replaying hands, calculating odds, my stomach churning with a toxic cocktail of anxiety and adrenaline. I was becoming a stranger in my own home, a polite guest who looked like the man they loved, but whose soul resided in the digital ether of the casino, a place that was slowly, methodically beginning to take everything. The wall I had built between my two lives began to crumble, not all at once, but brick by brick, as the pressure of my secret debt mounted. The $30,000 hole became a $50,000 chasm, then a $100,000 abyss. Chasing my losses became my primary occupation. My actual job, the one that had built my fortune and my reputation, became a tedious distraction. My focus at the firm, once laser-sharp, was now permanently blurred. I would sit in meetings with clients, discussing multi-million-dollar strategies, while simultaneously checking the odds on a tennis match in another hemisphere on my phone under the table. My partner noticed the change. He'd ask if I was okay, if things were all right at home. I became a master of deflection, blaming my distraction on stress, lack of sleep, the pressures of the market, anything but the truth. The irony was suffocating. I was advising CEOs on how to manage their company's financial health while my own was in a state of catastrophic terminal decline. My home, once my sanctuary, became a stage for my performance as a normal, functioning husband and father. The effort it took was immense. I had to constantly monitor my tone, my expressions, to ensure the roiling panic inside didn't show on my face. Every unexpected question from my wife about our finances sent a jolt of ice through my veins. "Did you see the property tax bill came?" she might ask innocently, and my mind would race, trying to remember if I had already raided the account meant for that payment. I started liquidating our real investments, the tangible proof of our shared future. It started with the Bitcoin. I sold it all off during a price surge, framing it to my wife as a brilliant move of taking profits off the table. "It's a volatile asset," I explained, with the cool authority of a seasoned investor. "Let's move this into something safer." The safer place was my betting account. The money was gone within a week. Next were the shares in those tech startups, the ones we had been so excited about. I sold them one by one, fabricating stories about poor quarterly earnings or management shakeups. Each sale was a betrayal, an act of financial vandalism against my own family. I was dismantling our future to pay for my past. The joy and intimacy of our marriage began to wither in the arid climate of my deceit. My wife would try to connect, to talk about her day or her dreams for our family, but I was incapable of being truly present. I was an empty vessel, my emotional energy completely consumed by the relentless cycle of betting, losing, and chasing. Our conversations became superficial, our physical intimacy strained and infrequent. She knew something was fundamentally broken between us. She thought it was her. She would ask what she had done wrong if I still loved her. I would reassure her with hollow words which only compounded my guilt. I was not only destroying our finances, I was systematically destroying her self-esteem, making her believe she was the cause of the distance my addiction had created. The kids felt it too. Children have an innate sense for emotional dishonesty. My son, who used to run into my arms the moment I got home, started to become more hesitant, watchful. My daughter once came to show me a drawing she had made, and I snapped at her, my nerves frayed from a devastating loss on a football game. The look of shock and hurt on her face is seared into my memory. I had made my own child afraid of me, all because of a stupid bet. The casino was no longer just taking my money, it was taking my identity as a good father and a loving husband. I needed more capital. The family accounts were nearly drained and my credit was stretched to its limit. My addiction, desperate for its next fix, led me to the last place I should have ever gone, my business. I started to borrow from the company accounts. I justified it with the same old lies I told myself. It was a short-term loan, a liquidity issue. I would pay it all back with my next big win. I, a man whose reputation was built on integrity and fiscal responsibility, was now embezzling from my own company, betraying the partner who had trusted me for over a decade. The pressure was becoming unbearable. I was a tightrope walker, balancing over a canyon of lies, with the winds of discovery threatening to blow me off at any moment. I was sleeping too, maybe 3 hours a night, my body fueled by coffee and a constant, low-grade terror. I lost weight, my face became gaunt, and dark circles formed under my eyes. I looked in the mirror one morning and barely recognized the man staring back at me. He looked haunted, hunted. The casino had promised a world of glamour and control, but the reality was this. A lonely, terrified man in a silent, expensive house, slowly being consumed by a secret that was growing more monstrous by the day. The big win I was chasing, the one that would solve everything, never came. It was a mirage in a desert of my own making, always shimmering on the horizon but never getting any closer. And I was so focused on that mirage that I failed to see that I was dying of thirst, and I was taking my entire family down with me. The end was coming, I could feel it. The structure of my life was groaning under the weight of my deceit, and I knew with a sickening certainty that a complete and total collapse was inevitable. The collapse began not with a bang, but with a quiet, professional phone call. It was my business partner. His voice was strained, stripped of its usual warmth. He had found discrepancies in the quarterly accounts, a large, unauthorized withdrawal that I had disguised as a payment to a vendor. He had called the vendor. They had no record of it. He asked for an explanation. I had none. The lie I had been telling myself, that I was just borrowing the money, evaporated in the face of his calm, direct question. I was an embezzler, a thief. The conversation was short. He told me not to come into the office. Our lawyers would be in touch. In the space of 5 minutes, the career I had spent my entire adult life building was over. The company I had helped create from nothing had cast me out. The shame was a physical force, so powerful it made me double over. But my first thought was not about my career or my partner. It was a flash of pure animal panic. How was I going to hide this from my wife? I went home and pretended it was a normal day. I played with the kids, I asked about her day, I helped with dinner. The entire time, a silent scream was echoing in my skull. I felt like a dead man walking, an imposter in the heart of my own family. The facade lasted for 2 days. The end came in the form of a certified letter. My wife signed for it, thinking it was something routine. It was from my partner's lawyer, a formal notice of my termination and a demand for the immediate repayment of the stolen funds, threatening legal action. She read it, then she read it again. I was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her. I saw the confusion on her face morph into disbelief and then into a slow, dawning horror. She looked up at me, the letter trembling in her hand. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was in that moment, in that terrible, silent space between us, that the entire universe of my lies imploded. I confessed everything. The words poured out of me in a pathetic, incoherent flood. The gambling, the online casinos, the lies, the secret accounts. I told her about the liquidated investments, the drained savings, the Bitcoin, the shares. And finally, the ugliest truth of all, the money I had stolen from our business, the business that was meant to secure our children's future. I laid out the full scale of the financial devastation. We were not just in debt, we were ruined. Worse than ruined. We were on the verge of losing everything, including our home, and I was facing the possibility of criminal charges. I had expected her to scream, to cry, to rage. She did none of those things. She just listened, her face becoming a pale, expressionless mask. When I finally ran out of words, the silence that fell was more damning than any accusation. She got up from the table, walked past me as if I wasn't there, and went upstairs. I heard the click of our bedroom door closing. I had not only bankrupted our family, I had broken something in her, something I knew could never be repaired. The days that followed were a surreal, quiet hell. We lived in the same house but were separated by an impassable chasm of my betrayal. She spoke to me only when necessary, in clipped, emotionless sentences, usually concerning the children. She was in survival mode, her entire focus shifting to protecting them from the fallout of the bomb I had detonated. She met with lawyers. She started separating our finances, a brutal and necessary act of self-preservation. Every conversation I overheard was a fresh stab of guilt. The foreclosure notices began to arrive. The threatening calls from creditors became a constant, ugly chorus. My children, shielded from the specifics, could not be shielded from the grief that now saturated our home. They saw their mother's red-rimmed eyes in the morning. They felt the crushing tension at the dinner table. They knew their world had been fundamentally broken. The day she told me she was leaving was a gray, drizzly afternoon. She didn't pack her bags in a fit of anger. She had been preparing for weeks, a quiet, methodical retreat from the life we had shared. Her parents were coming to help her and the kids move into their small guest house. She told me this with a calm finality that left no room for argument or appeal. There were no pleas for a second chance from me. I had forfeited the right to ask for anything. I just stood there hollowed out as she explained that she had to put the children first, that she could not let them grow up in the chaos and insecurity I had created. The hardest moment was saying goodbye to the kids. They didn't understand. My daughter cried, clinging to my leg, asking why we couldn't all go to Grandma's house together. My son just looked at me with wide, confused eyes. I knelt down and hugged them, burying my face in their hair, trying to breathe in the scent of their innocence one last time. I wanted to tell them I was sorry, but the words felt like a cheap, meaningless currency. My actions had spoken for me, and they had said I was a man who had chosen a game over his own family. I stood at the living room window and watched them drive away. The car disappeared around the corner, taking with it the entire meaning of my life. The house, once a symbol of my success, was now just a big, empty box, a mausoleum for a life I had killed. The casino hadn't just taken my money. It had taken my career, my integrity, my wife's love, and my children's home. It had taken everything I loved, and it had left me with the one thing I deserved: absolutely nothing. In the deafening silence of the empty house, I was finally alone with the consequences of my actions. The creditors, the lawyers, the foreclosure process, they were just the logistics of my ruin. The real punishment was the solitude, the endless hours to do nothing but contemplate the sheer scale of what I had destroyed. I didn't fight the foreclosure. I walked away from the house with a single suitcase of clothes, leaving behind a decade and a half of memories to be cataloged and sold off by the bank. I was officially homeless, professionally disgraced, and morally bankrupt. I ended up in a weekly rental motel on the industrial edge of town, the kind of place that smells of disinfectant and despair. It was a fitting exile. My days were a featureless gray. I had no purpose, no one to answer to, nothing to do but drown in my own shame. For a time, I entertained the darkest of thoughts, the idea that a permanent end was the only way to stop the pain. What kept me alive was a single, flickering image in my mind: my children's faces in the car window as they drove away. The thought that their last memory of their father would be one of cowardice was the one thing I couldn't stomach. I had to face what I had done. I had to survive it. The first step was the hardest. I walked into a gambler's anonymous meeting in the basement of a church. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and cheap cigarettes. I sat in the back, listening to stories that were variations of my own, stories of loss, of deceit, of hitting a bottom so hard it shattered your soul. For the first time, I didn't feel like a uniquely monstrous failure. I felt like a sick man among other sick people. When it was my turn to speak, the story I had confessed to my wife came tumbling out again, but this time it wasn't a desperate plea. It was a simple, unvarnished admission of fact. I said my name, and I said I was a gambler. Admitting my powerlessness was the first real act of power I had taken in years. I needed a job, any job, to start chipping away at the mountain of court-ordered child support and restitution I owed my former partner. I found work as a night cleaner in an office building downtown. The irony was not lost on me. I, who once commanded boardrooms in buildings like this, was now scrubbing their toilets and emptying their trash cans, but the work was honest. It was tangible. At the end of the night, the floors were clean. It was a small, simple accomplishment, but it was real. It wasn't the illusion of a win on a screen. My life became a simple, monastic routine. I worked, I slept, I went to my meetings. I saved every penny I could, sending the majority of it to my ex-wife. I didn't expect it to fix anything, but it was an act of responsibility, the only thing I had to offer. I began to understand that my obsession with the casino was a symptom of a deeper sickness. I had tied my entire self-worth to the accumulation of things: money, status, a successful startup, a big house. I had seen my life as a series of risky investments, and I thought I was smart enough to beat the odds every time. The casino was just the most literal manifestation of that worldview. It fed my ego, my belief that I was a master of the universe, until it revealed the terrifying truth: I was in control of nothing. After a year of this quiet, disciplined existence, I wrote a letter to my ex-wife. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I just stated the facts. I told her I was in recovery, that I was working, and that I finally understood that my real fortune hadn't been in my bank account or my stock portfolio. It had been in our home, with her and the children. I told her that I knew I had lost the right to be her husband, but I hoped one day to earn back the right to be a father. A month later, she called. She agreed to let me see the kids. Our first meeting was at a McDonald's place. It was awkward and supervised. But seeing them, hearing their laughter, it was like water in a desert. I wasn't the powerful dad who could buy them anything anymore. I was just the man who showed up, who listened to their stories, whose eyes didn't drift to a phone screen. My life today is unrecognizable from what it once was. I live in a small, clean apartment. I no longer clean offices, I work for a landscaping company. The work is hard and physical under the open sky. I don't have investments or shares or cryptocurrency. My budget is a simple tally of income and expenses in a notebook. The debt I carry is immense, a shadow that will walk with me for the rest of my life. But I am solvent, I am sober, I am present. I see my children regularly. Our relationship is tentative, fragile, but it is real. I am rebuilding their trust not with grand gestures, but with consistency, with the simple act of being the reliable, honest man I should have been all along. I lost a fortune, a company, a home. The casino took everything I thought I loved, but it was only after losing it all that I discovered what was truly valuable. It's the feeling of the sun on my back after a day of hard work. It's the sound of my daughter telling me about her day at school. It's the quiet peace of a life lived honestly, one day at a time. The thrill of the casino is a distant echo now, a phantom limb. It promised me everything and gave me nothing. I have nothing now, and yet, in a strange way, I have everything that matters. Thanks for listening all the way through. Let me know your thoughts and your country in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories.